Hi and welcome along to AFTV. We've got a very special super fan debate today because as well as talking, well, it's talking vaccinations, right? Which could be our pathway back to going into football games, right? And we've had a season where we've had no football. And me, for one, I'm desperate to go back into football. I know Pippa is, well, maybe not DT. No, DT is desperate too. And we've got a very special guest with us today. This is Dr. Emeka. Doctor, you've come today to talk to us about vaccines and vaccinations. It is a bit of a, especially with young people, they've seen a lot of older people getting vaccinated. And they're saying to themselves, I don't know, man, yeah, maybe I'll get vaccinated, but then I've got a few questions. Yeah. And we wanted to put a few of those questions to you today. So, brought around a couple of the regulars with us. Yeah. Right, you would have seen DT, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you need a special type of vaccine for him, that's it, right? Right, Pippa. We're here to discuss that. First of all, what I wanted to ask you is, who do you support?
Well, it's a tricky question. I'm glad you guys have me here with all
this. Be very careful.
Arsenal gear. It's making me a little bit sweaty. I'm actually a Man United fan.
Ooh.
You know what?
I'm off. See you later.
You know what it is? I respect Arsenal for competing with us for all these years. As in,
all those years.
Yeah, all those years. For sure enough, no. My dad's a big Arsenal fan. So is my brother, and obviously a lot of Arsenal's lineage I loved.
What happened to you then?
Honestly, I just fell in love with Man United. I loved Beckham back in the day, Scholes, that golden era, Nicky Butt.
Anyway, we'll change the subject now. So getting back onto the vaccinations, right? So, no, seriously, what we were discussing this amongst ourselves the other day, and we were saying, how do we get back into football fully? Because we've seen, even now, you're having football games, there's 10,000 people coming back in and, all these little experiments that you're doing towards the end of the season. Yeah. But we're how do we get back to seeing 60,000 people at the Emirates, 74,000 people at Old Trafford, do you feel vaccinations is one of those ways back? Because we're hearing that could be the way back at festivals and what's your thinking on it?
100%. I think it's going to come down to basically the government's going to look at guidelines and it's going to look at, in terms of number we're treating, death rate, how many are admitted. So we're seeing obviously a drop in the number of cases, we're seeing a drop in the number of admissions, we're seeing a drop in the number of deaths. I think the average death number in the UK is about 9 now. At one point it was 1,000 per day. And now that we're seeing a drop in that, I think we've vaccinated a lot of the vulnerable people. So a lot of the people we were seeing coming into the NHS and being admitted and unfortunately not making it out of the hospital were the vulnerable people. So the people who were elderly in age, the people who had comorbidities, a number of different medical theories gone into it. And so we looked at that and we looked at the people we needed to vaccinate first. Obviously the government came up with a scheme and said people like me who are obviously high risk because I work with people who are vulnerable, obviously offered the vaccine first, people in healthcare, people in care homes, the elderly, people with long-term conditions. And because a lot of those people now have received at least one dose of the vaccine, so we're seeing a steady drop down. I think it's going to be a case where obviously we can't exactly predict how the disease is going to go fully. We know that there are new strains and new variants which come out all across the world at any point in time. We're not sure exactly if the vaccine is going to be efficient with all the variants, but so far what we've seen in the UK is that the vaccines are working. We've seen the drop. Obviously, a lot of it's due to lockdown, a lot of it's due to the number of the things we've done, but hopefully, if it goes the way it's going, we could see ourselves back at big events, such as football games, festivals, traveling again. That's the aim, isn't it? To get the country up and running again.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we know it's a serious thing. I mean, I had it, DT had it at Christmas as well. We both had it at Christmas, around about Christmas time.
How did you feel?
And it ain't nice, man.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, fortunately, I think I can only speak for myself. Yeah. The worst of it for me was the tiredness. Yeah. I felt so tired for about
drained.
For about 7 days. The fatigue. But that was really the worst of it for me. Yeah. And the temperature. I had the temperature. But I have an uncle who passed away from it, so I know how serious it was. How bad did you get it?
Pretty much the same. It was the first few days.
I remember you brought it into the building.
I
so.
never.
Here we go.
Don't
We've
start
had this big
again.
argument about
It was him. He was the one coughing over everybody, and he passed it around. But it was, and the thing is, what was the more scary part for me is that I'm in the high risk category. So me catching it could have literally killed me. And then when I found out I had it, it was kind of like, whoa, like your mind starts racing, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna die next week. That's it, life's over. But yeah, I suppose I didn't have it as bad as what you hear some people having it, because obviously, you know, I had the tiredness. That was the one thing, really tired and
Fatigue,
flat.
Yeah.
You know, in that respect, I never really had a I had one day of a high temperature, but then it was gone. So I think, in terms of some of the symptoms you've seen some people get and some of the cases, I think we had it mild.
Yeah, compared to how it could have gone.
How
it can be, as we know, it can be
A lot worse.
But
it can be a lot worse.
The fact that you guys have been exposed to it, and obviously sorry for your uncle, but you've seen like you've seen what it could do.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm guessing your uncle was in the high risk category.
Yeah, he was actually. Yeah.
My son had it as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So at the same time, my son that was diagnosed with it, he's 20 years old, and he's like fit as anything, and he just felt the same time. He was like, "What on earth is happening to me?" Like he'd been hit by a truck, and he was like, "I'm gonna go and get a test done as well." Straight away, it was positive. And I'm adamant that my younger children have had it as well, but they're, you know, young kids alike. They're just
immune system's better.
My 10-year-old, he had it, but he had no symptoms at all, nothing, and he was just like, oh, I just feel the same. And then my two youngest ones, we never got them tested, but they had similarities which would suggest that they did
positive as well.
So Dr. Emeka, right? The vaccine, right? Because obviously we've had it, we all know people who've had it, we've all seen what's been going on in the world. You're saying to us that cases are definitely dropping, we're seeing them return back to normality because of the vaccine, but that's why I brought these guys as well with me here today. Yeah. Because there are questions around the vaccine, especially that young people are asking. I think a lot of older people, they're like, give me my shot, man, I'm ready. I'm good. But for younger people, they're like, hey, I don't know, man. I mean, Pippa, I know you got a few questions around it.
Like, it might sound like I've got a few, but I'll start off with the simple ones.
Okay.
So, like, if you get an injection, for fans, say, like, fans going to a game next season, do you then still have to wear a mask and be socially distanced?
Yes, at this point, that's what we're working with. So, despite you getting an injection, it doesn't make you, like, completely immune 100%. Okay. Obviously, it gives you a good sense of immunity. However, you know you can still catch the virus and you can still spread the virus. It doesn't completely stop transmission, which is obviously spread. However, it can reduce your symptoms, reduce, you know, how ill you get. So let's say if you were to get COVID again, because you've had COVID, you probably may have developed antibodies. Most people who have COVID do. So if you were exposed to it again, your body would react in a different way, your immune system would be set up, and you wouldn't feel as down for obviously a week, and yourself as well. That's basically what the vaccine does. It helps you produce antibodies, so when you're exposed to the virus, the severity is a lot less. Okay. And if the severity is a lot less, you're less likely to be coughing, and obviously, you know, passing the virus on and spreading it. Transmission, the viral shed is a lot less, and so hopefully in that way, it kind of reduces transmission. But it doesn't completely.
I'm glad you said that, because there's a lot of people, especially my age, that are under the illusion that once you get the vaccine, that's it, you're never getting COVID.
It's not quite like that. So I've had both my doses of vaccine months ago, but when I travel, I still have a mask on. I still socially distance because I know I could still potentially spread it. There are a lot of asymptomatic carriers who may have the virus and spread it to people who obviously are vulnerable, and unfortunately that could go south. So
one of the big questions that a lot of people are asking is, what's in it?
Yeah.
Right? They're like, you know, all right, how comes this thing?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you know what I mean? Normally we know that it takes like 10 years to develop something like this. Within a year, there's been all these different vaccines that have come up. So there's a lot of younger people going, well, hold on, what is in that? I don't know, man, I don't know. You know,
Yeah,
you know, what's in it?
No, honestly,
You know?
I know what you mean. If people like are skeptical, they're like, hang on, this vaccine's come out, it's come out very quickly. I think it's because obviously none of us have been in a pandemic before. So there was a severe need to produce a vaccine as quickly as possible. So because of that, they recruited participants as quickly as possible and companies got working. There was a lot of funding put in to making a vaccine because ideally we wanted to be out the pandemic as soon as possible. We realize it's a virus. We've seen viral disease before. We've seen a number of diseases similar to this, and we know just how well vaccines can work. Many of us have had childhood vaccines in terms of, you know, the normal vaccination schedule here in the UK if you're born here. And then I'm sure your children may have had the vaccines if you've given them. And when I came into work, clinical work, we actually had to bring a letter, a sheet from our GP showing what vaccines we'd had because we knew we'd be exposed to a number of diseases. We had to make sure we could cover for like tuberculosis, etc. And many of us actually had to have some shots before we got into the clinical areas. So we know that vaccines have been one of the greatest medical interventions after clean water and antibiotics. So we knew, okay, we need to get a vaccine as soon as possible. So a number of different companies stopped what they were doing, started churning in towards this vaccine. The same way, a number of different companies which produce a number of goods started making PPE, like protective personal equipment, because we needed it. As in, how much PPE had you seen before the pandemic? Probably very little. But now it's everywhere. And that's kind of like the vaccine. Everything went to making it. And so in terms of what's in it, obviously anytime you go and get the vaccine, they do give you a leaflet which says the ingredients. And that's because if you're allergic to any of the ingredients, or you've had an anaphylactic reaction, like a severe allergic reaction to something you see, that's when we advise you not to take the vaccine. But basically, the way they work is they contain a little bit of genetic material from COVID, and when it's put into you, all it does is trigger an immune response. It creates like a protein, a spike protein, that your body recognizes as foreign, and then your body can create antibodies and cells to fight it. So that way, you're not actually injected with COVID, but if you then catch COVID, the body is ready to go bang, straight against it. It recognizes this genetic material that it's seen and thinks, okay, that's foreign, we need to make antibodies, we need to fight this. And that's basically just how it works.
So but with the period, right? Because there's been quite a few. We got our guy Cecil downstairs, and he said, and I've heard a lot of people say this. So I'll wait. They're like, I'll wait until give it a year or so, or whatever, to see how everybody else gets on with it. But what you're basically saying is, it's the reason why it hasn't taken 10 years is just because there's been more resources put into
way more
producing this quicker.
This is the biggest vaccination program in history, and it's had to go through the same vigorous checks that all the other vaccines had. So it's just literally going through the same process but quicker because of the need. It was a supply and demand. We needed it as soon as possible. So imagine everyone turns all their attention to do one thing, and that's produce a vaccine. And that's why it's happened so quickly. If in the normal vaccination schedule, you'd set out a program, okay, over the next year we'll do trials, over the next year we'll go through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials, and then we'll create a vaccine in 2027, et cetera, et cetera. But here it was like, no, it has to be as soon as possible. We need to recruit as many people as possible and get the phases going as quickly as possible, which required funding, which obviously the government and a lot of people provided, and that's why we were able to get the vaccine so quickly. It's actually kind of like a miracle when you think about how quickly we were able to do it. Because when we were in the depths of the pandemic and we were working on awards and things were looking terrible, all of us in the healthcare were thinking we need some sort of vaccine or something. And we were thinking it could take a year, a few years. We didn't know. But the fact they're able to get it by the end of the year was just like, thank God. Now we start rolling it out. And now obviously we're seeing the benefits of it, if that makes sense. So I can understand why people are a little bit touch and go, like, it's a bit to come out a bit quick. But it's like we have safety and regulatory checks from the MHRA, the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Agency, where everything has to go through safety and efficacy checks. Like they're papers, which are public, that anyone can go and read, which shows the testing and shows the checks and shows the clinical trials. Because even before I had my vaccine, I went to read it, just to make sure. I was like, let me have a look at this and go through it.
Are there public papers to say how, because I don't know how many test trials there were, because it was such a short period of time, but is there public papers to say how people have reacted to it once they've taken the vaccine?
They're phase trials. And not only that, you can report. So there's a reportable side effects actual platform where you can report if you've had the vaccine and you've had negative effects from it, you can actually go and report that. And the government and everyone's regulating that very closely to see, and because of that, they've been able to actually assess different vaccines and think, okay, this one's more safe in this demographic, this one's more safe in this demographic. We've had reports from potential blood clots from this vaccine. So although very small, we advise that if you're of this age, you should go for this primarily, that sort of thing. And then it's fed back to us in A&E, an emergency, to look out for certain presentations if people have had the vaccine within 4 days and 4 weeks, if that makes sense. So it's something that's being monitored. It's not like, okay, we rolled out the vaccine, wash our hands of it. It's like they're rolling out the vaccine and seeing how it goes as it's being rolled out in different demographics for safety. And if they find anything that they don't feel is safe, they would recall it, or they would put out a guideline in order to make it safe for those individuals, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Is that why there's two different, is it called variants, two different type of vaccinations?
No, well, in the UK there are 3 different types, but it's more so due to the companies producing them. It's more so due to the businesses producing them. So you have the Pfizer one, which was first, and that's the one I got my 2 doses in. That came out, I think, in December time, quite early. And then obviously we had the Oxford AstraZeneca, which was developed here. That came out, and we've had a number of different doses of that. And we've just been obviously going to the Moderna vaccine, which is similar to the Pfizer, and that's out now. So you have 3 different ones currently in force in the UK that work in similar ways to basically trigger the immune system to recognize coronavirus without giving you COVID, and then obviously protecting us, which means less admissions, less deaths.
See, I've had 2 vaccines, and I never felt any side effects or anything on either. But do you think that was down to the fact that I had COVID, so my body was already adapted to what you were saying? It kind of recognized what was going into my body, and it's like, right, I've got a defense mechanism already in place.
It was, to be fair, it was probably just due to your body, because the vaccine didn't actually give you COVID.
Yeah.
So it would be different if, so you had COVID, you probably developed antibodies. So if you were exposed to COVID again and you tested and were positive, but you didn't feel symptoms, then that would make sense. Could be like, okay, now you've been exposed to COVID, but because you've had antibodies, the reaction is very different. Yeah. But the vaccine just gave the genetic material to make more antibodies.
Okay.
So it wouldn't have caused a significant reaction just because you'd already had antibodies.
The only thing I had was the dead arm.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. That's the other thing now. You've got people who say, right, I've had it.
Yeah.
I've had a vaccine. My arm was killing me of it, right? There's other people who said, oh, you know, I heard that if you take it, you'll be sick for days and things like that.
Yeah, so it's around 1 in 10 people can kind of get side effects. It depends on, you know, your own body. It's like any medication. So in medicine, we prescribe medication to people. It works differently in everybody. If I give you a painkiller, you might feel a bit sick, or you might get a little bit constipated, or one of the side effects of the painkillers might affect you differently to how it affects Pippa. It doesn't mean it's any different medication. You're both getting the same thing, but your body will process it differently. I was fortunate not to have side effects, but my sister, who took the same vaccine, she did. My mum did, but my dad didn't, I didn't, my brother didn't. So we often tell people these are side effects to expect within 7 days. So feeling a bit fatigued, having a bit of fever, having a bit of a sore arm, possibly getting headaches. So we tell people this is normal. This is basically your body producing antibodies. There's a normal reaction to the genetic material, and it's basically saying it's working.
But how long is it normal for?
That's what we say, usually about a week's time. Anything prolonging after a week, after the dose, like severe persistent headaches and stuff like that, we say if that's continuing, then you should go call 111 or seek medical advice.
I might need to do that anyway, because being an Arsenal fan, I've got a constant headache.
This guy.
I'm going to have to call 111 and be like, yeah, I've got a constant headache. What's wrong, Arsenal?
They might hang up on you, to be fair.
That's it.
You come to AD, I'll prescribe you a United jersey.
No, that'll make me even worse. No. We're not going down that route. No way.
Take 2 of these, the home and away kit, you'll be good.
No, definitely not. What about the conspiracy theories? Because obviously you would have heard it, like 5G, and they're putting chips into us and they're going to follow us, even though you're all using iPhones.
That's the thing.
Everyone knows where you are. And
I mean, that is a real fear. There are people saying that, you know, it's they can be tracked
Yeah.
on it.
The thing is, so in the medical profession, we hear this and we're like, really? But I don't want to dismiss it as silly because people genuinely have concerns.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's no link between any chip and Bill Gates and following anyone, and you don't turn into
Mark
an
of the
alien
beast.
and none of that stuff. I think what happened is there's a bit of an infodemic, and when you get on the internet could be a great place, it can also be a dangerous place. All it takes is for a couple of people to come up with a couple of theories, and then obviously you have fear-mongering and panic, and people are like, nah, I'm not getting that. Bill Gates put a chip in me, no thank you. And then you're thinking, but realistically, let's think of why we're getting the vaccine. We're in the pandemic. You've seen COVID. It's very real. We've seen the destruction it can do. We've seen the situation that's put us in the community. We're not making vaccines to follow people. We're not making chips and vaccines. We're making vaccines so that we can reduce the number of people dying, being admitted, and so we can go on with normal life. It just, from a common sense point of view, it wasn't making sense. And then when you think of what's in the vaccine and how it works, there's no sense that it can have any tracking or chip or anything like that. And plus, I'm not sure if the government really needs to know when you go to Tesco or when you go to Arsenal games. I don't think that's their primary concern. I think the lives of the general public and creating some sort of herd immunity is more the concern. Obviously, people can be seen on their phones and tracked on their phones and Google Maps and all this, but at the end of the day, you have to look at what the vaccine was created for. Like, we were literally in a lockdown. Nobody was going anywhere.
Yeah.
We had to do something, and vaccine was created for that. It wasn't created so that we can know what time you come back from the pub and what time you've been to the chip shop. Like, as interesting as people's lives are, I don't think that was a general concern for the vaccines. When people say this, I'm like, where did that come from? Like, why would that be the first reasoning of why you're being given a vaccine? So you're not thinking it's because of all the numbers that people are dying? You think it's because we want to follow you? It doesn't really make sense to me. So
yeah, I get that. See,
I just kinda
when I got
explain to
offered
people.
it, I was like, yeah, I'm there. Let's go. Because I'm already thinking ahead, and I'm not just thinking because like my mum and dad have had it as well, and they're both nearly 80 years old now, and it's not just about protecting ourselves, but you know, others as well.
But do you have to have two?
Yeah.
Do you have to have the two of them?
For full immunity, you need 2 doses of the ones that we currently have in the UK. There is one in America. I'm not sure if you know if you've heard of Johnson & Johnson, where you have 1 shot, and then 2 weeks after you're
Ain't that baby products?
That
is. It's like talcum
They
powder.
make. They're the company that
and
make
like
it.
they're the company that make.
listen, you got kids, you know about Johnson and Johnson. It's like talcum powder and
that's
creams.
exactly
and-
my point. Because like, okay, think about it. They're known for that. However, because of the situation in America, they went into creating a vaccine, and they've now created and produced a vaccine that's circulating there. And America has had an amazing vaccination program where they've vaccinated almost 40% of their population. And now, because of what the CDC says, they're already treating vaccinated individuals differently to non-vaccinated individuals. And saying if you're vaccinated, you won't have to go through the checks of wearing a mask and social distancing. Obviously, that's not the case here in the UK, and we can only follow the guidance given for us in the UK and the NHS. But you can see there the culture is vaccine or no vaccine. You can see the difference already. So that's kind of how it is.
But can you see the difference? So like you said, people are concerned about not going on holiday in a year's time. How would you actually know if someone's had a vaccine or not? That's
a very good question, to be honest. That was my worry when I first heard that. When I first heard in America, okay, if you had your 2 doses and you're full immune, you don't have to wear your mask or whatnot, and you could operate a little bit more freely. I think it was more to incentivize the freedom. But my question was, isn't that just going to force people to just not wear their masks and say, yeah, I've had my vaccine, but how would you prove it? I think here, I'm not sure about over there, but here, when you're vaccinated, 1, it goes on your NHS record. You need to put your NHS number every time you get your vaccine, as you'll know. 2, you're given a card, a vaccine card. And everyone's given a copy of that, of what vaccine you had and when you had it. It may be a case of this is linked to your NHS and they'll be able to see it. So maybe you'll have to state your NHS number and people will be able to look it up. Sorry?
What, when you're booking your flights?
Potentially, I don't know.
Wow.
Like, we don't know how it's going to work, and we don't know how other countries are going to see it, because other countries may have their own policies and say, well, okay, if you can prove you've had these 2 vaccines, you give your NHS number, you can show your card, then you won't have to quarantine for 2 weeks when you get here. or you'd only have to take one test instead of 3. One before you go, one when you arrive, and then another one. That's what we could see.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not in place at the moment, but because at the end of the day, countries will be thinking of the safety of their citizens. And they know if you're vaccinated and you have full immunity, you're less likely to become ill, you're less likely, one, to use their hospital resources, and you're less likely to spread and transmit the disease in their country. So they might be like, okay, if you've had your vaccines, here, we'll take you, especially potentially America. But if you haven't had your vaccines, fair enough, you can still come, but this is what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to take a COVID test before you come, prove that COVID test when you come, then take another COVID test before you leave, and prove they're all negative, and then operate. So,
What about these variants, right? At the moment, we're in about the Indian variant. Is the vaccine going to protect against these different variants? Because that's the other thing. You're hearing now, you're thinking, well, hold on, wait, what's all this now? There's a new strain and a new variant.
It's a good question. So we had the new variant which came in around Christmas, which we found was a lot more contagious, a lot more transmissible, and the vaccine seemed to protect against that. We saw that virologists went and the scientists looked and they saw that there was protection against that. Obviously, with the new variants, such as the variant they've seen in India, it's hard to say how well the vaccine will protect against it. In terms of efficiency, we can only really say based on studies and science. Everything we do in medicine is based on facts, figures, studies, and science. And all those studies and science have been done here in the UK with the variants we've seen here. Likely, just due to theory and how the vaccine works, it's likely to have some protection against the new variants, but how much, nobody really knows. So I couldn't say, oh yeah, it's going to protect you against the variant we've seen in India, or, oh no, it probably won't because it's a new strain. It's going to be one of those things where I think they've identified now, I think Matt Hancock was discussing on news, they've identified now a number of cases of the variant which was originally found in India up in the north. And a few people had been hospitalized, but the people they'd seen who'd been hospitalized, the majority of them hadn't actually had the vaccine, and they were eligible for the vaccine. So they could have had it, but chose not to have it.
Right.
And those are the people who are in hospital, showing once again that vaccines save lives and they reduce hospital transmissions.
There you go. Get the vaccine.
You got a lot of young people, right? They're strong, they're fit, they've never had to go to hospital in their life. They ain't had no vaccine. They you know what I mean? Them man, they can run up and down. You know what I mean? They're fit, strong, go gym every day, right? Why should they take it? They'll be looking and say, I don't need them. And I've been through the last year and I ain't had no COVID. And even if I did have it, I felt good.
But that's the thing.
I'm strong.
You have to think about them jingoos. You have to think about the bigger picture. One, we're in a situation now where we're looking at something called long COVID, which are basically the effects of people who have had COVID and had mild symptoms maybe up to months ago. However, their lungs are undergoing changes at a cellular level, which means you may have breathlessness and symptoms such as not being able to bang gym the way you want to and getting out of breath months and months after you've actually contracted COVID. Wow. There's studies that are still going on at the moment called long COVID, and this affects younger people generally. That's what we're seeing. Not only that, you have to think of the wider population. Just because it may not affect you doesn't mean it won't affect mum, dad, granddad, uncle, etc. You can asymptomatically spread that to somebody who's vulnerable. And then you have to think, okay, is it worth that, or is it worth just getting your vaccine, protecting yourself and protecting your family? So it's not always just about the individual, it's about creating like a herd immunity to protect the whole country. If the majority of us are vaccinated, especially the ones who are, high risk, that's what's going to protect the NHS, that's what's going to protect the country, and potentially protect themselves from long COVID. So that's what I'm trying to explain to young people. Like, it's essential you get the vaccine too. Because I consider myself a generally fit person. I go gym here and there. I can run.
You look like every week. You look like she's there every day. I go here every day.
I go gym here and there. I can run. But the thing is, as soon as I had my eligibility to get the vaccine, I was first in the queue. I was like, sign me up. You know why? Because one, I know I'm in a group where I have parents who are high risk, who I do want to see, who I do want to mix with. Two, I have patients who are all high risk. I'm seeing high risk individuals every day at work. It would be ethically and morally wrong of me to decide, okay, I'm fit. I never had COVID. Despite my exposure to that, I never actually was tested positive with COVID. So I was working in a HDU COVID ward for weeks and months. I was working in A&E seeing COVID patients daily. And I never had symptoms of COVID. Neither did my brother or my sister. Yet the minute we were able to get the vaccine, 3 of us, we didn't even question it. Boom, signed. I went with my brother, we were as quick as possible to get the vaccine because we knew. We knew it's not just about us.
Yeah.
It's about, one, the people we treat, the people we're seeing, and our families in high risk. And so you have to have that kind of altruistic view of life and think it's not just about me. As in, what's the vaccine really going to do to you? We know the safety of the vaccine, and we know how detrimental COVID could be. So what's it getting a jab, 2 jabs to protect yourself and your family versus having this kind of arrogant point of view that, oh, I'm good, it doesn't affect me, I'm fit and healthy. We have seen fit and healthy people fall too. I was treating 24-year-olds in resus.
Wow.
When after the first pandemic, after the first lockdown, literally, I was working on call. I was in A&E the day pubs, I think like August 4th, the day things opened up. Literally, one of my first patients was 24. Had been down the pub. I think he'd kissed some girl.
Oh, God.
And she texted him, literally, as she was in resus, said, I've just been tested positive for COVID. Meanwhile, she didn't know that this man's in hospital in resus and I'm treating him with oxygen right now.
Wow.
Damn.
And he was positive for COVID too. Yeah.
Damn.
And this guy was a 24-year-old.
That kiss was not worth it, boy.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
You don't want to be, you don't want that COVID kiss.
No.
See, obviously he survived and he's better now, but it taught him a lesson.
Jeez, I wonder if that's what it's going to be like now. You meet a girl in a club and you've got to ask if they've been
Just don't kiss
vaccinated
girls
or can they prove that they, like, you know, you get them test kits. You pull one of them out, quickly do that before I kiss you. Just let me know, let me find out you're negative first. Hold on, wait there.
Lean in with a swab.
You're sitting there, everyone in the club now getting swabs out. No.
Listen,
Get a rapid one. Just wait there 30 minutes. Let's see this before we proceed.
Doctor, you've answered so many of our questions and we're really appreciative of that. And you know, you guys have been doing such a fantastic job as well. Really appreciate you coming down today. You guys got any more questions? Or
Oh, I think I'm covered.
Yeah.
I was covered anyway. It was kind of like...
You just worried about flying out, weren't you?
I
He's just worried about his holiday.
Yeah.
Listen,
Right?
the season finishes at the weekend and I'm going on holiday. I don't care where it is. I'm going
Get
to
me out of
find
here.
what country will let me in. Not just because of vaccines, but
Might let you in,
because
might not
they
let
will
you
let
in.
me in.
Just
full
let me
stop. And I'm going. I just want to get away, man.
Nah, I know you
And
mean.
just
if
be normal.
people, Dr. Mika, have got questions, where can they go to find out what's the best place for them to go to get those questions answered? Is there somewhere on the internet? Or
Yeah. The best places are the NHS resources, nhs.uk and gov.uk. They're fantastic resources, and not only that, they adapt and they show you, in terms of their times, they clinically update based on the studies, based on the time. So obviously things have changed over the year, protocols and guidelines change over the year, and they show you when the guidelines have changed and when they've been published. So they show you, as of this date, these are the new rules, these are the guidelines that the NHS and gov.uk suggest. So anyone that goes on there can type in any question about COVID. They have a big resource of frequently asked questions, because obviously everyone's thinking the same thing, and they have a bunch of detailed, peer-reviewed answers.
Okay.
So those are the places to go.
All right. Well, listen. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. What I suggest to people is, or we try and put some of those links in the description as well. Check it out for yourself. Do your own research. Don't just listen to rumours.
Yeah.
That seems to be what I'm picking up from
No,
you
100%,
today. You know,
100%.
find out for yourself and check the information. Don't just, oh, I heard this and I heard that. Check it out. Find out for yourself.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah, exactly.
see if you're reassured by that. Is there a vaccine that we could give to the Arsenal players or win the league next season? Win the league vaccine, man. You know what I mean? We
It
can
would
solve
take a
that.
lot longer than a year to make that. Dear God.
I don't think anything can help someone.
All right. Hey, I thought he was all right.
He was getting on fine until he said that.
But listen, no, thank you very
Nah,
much.
it's good.
Really
It's good.
appreciate you coming down. And as I said to
you.
everybody, you know, we'll put a link in the description if you want to find out more. It's a very important issue. I know a lot of people do worry about it, right? And we understand that, you know. So please check it out for yourself. Do your research. And I think the message what Dr. Emeka is saying today is that, you know, the vaccines do help. But you check it out for yourself. Thank you very much.